So, good evening all. Now we start with another topic of immunology, that is practical immunology, in which we discuss about all the different type of immunological tools which are the part of the unit 2 also. So, in immunological tools, first of all we discuss about what are the immunological tools. If you go through the detail of the immunological tool, then you see that mostly in the case of the immunological tool, we use the antibodies as a tool. So, why we use antibody as a tool? Because antibodies have the specific recognition of macromolecules, and how they can be carried out the specific recognition with the different type of the surface molecules. They are termed as CD markers available on the cell types. So antibodies recognizes the macromolecules by binding with those CD receptors which are available on their surface of cell types. These macromolecules are also recognized by the pathogens, antibodies. Now another type of the tool which can used for the antibodies, that is antibodies as labels, antibodies as trait, antibodies as competitors, antibodies used for the detection of different type of assays, localization and quantitation. So these all are the immunological methods. So whenever you go for the some immunological research or immunological practical work, then we carried out these type of the function by using the antibodies. They can recognize the different macromolecules, we can label the different cell component, we can track some antigenic component with these antibodies, we can compete the antibody with some other antibodies, and we also carried out the different assay process like detection, localization and the quantitation. Now, brief history of antibody. If we see that some time gap of these antibody, then we find out antibody term is that originated from the Latin word anti-copper, which is coined by Paul Ehrlich in 1891. What does it mean? It means the substance which is available in the blood and confirms the immunity. So Paul Ehrlich is the first person who see the function of the blood against some pathogenic component, and that is how they can be just generate the word immunity. And if two substances give rise to three different anticorpus, that means antibodies, then they themselves must be different. Another very important phenomenon which is explained by the Paul Ehrlich is that the interaction between the antibody with the antigen is the similar model which is like lock and the key theory. In 1920, Heidelberger and Avery identified antibodies as protein. So Paul Ehrlich not be described about the biological nature of these antibodies, but Heidelberger and Avery give that these antibodies by nature are proteins. 1940, Linus Pauling confirmed lock and key hypothesis, which is proposed by the Paul Ehrlich, confirms its hypothesis and said that antibodies are interacting with their antigenic component with similar model like lock and key component. In 1948, first immunoprecipitation process can be carried out by using antibodies, help in detection. In 1956, Glick and Chen separate these antibodies from the bursa fabricus, and in 1976 Hosmy and Tonikawa, that is another personality which may go for the antibodies gene arrangement. So this antibody gene arrangement is the process through which we can generate a huge amount of different type of antibodies. Okay, so these are some time lags in which we find out the different type of the work which is carried out in different time period for the antibodies to get the antibodies load. Now, characteristics of antibodies. Antibodies are highly specific. They have the ability to recognize individual epitope. They have cross-reactivity and they have the strength of binding. So first of all is specificity. Antibodies have highly specific or a high ability to recognize some individual epitope. They also have a cross epitope. What is the cross reactivity? That means they have the ability to bind to more than one epitope. They are when this cross reactivity is carried out? It is carried out when some shared epitopes are available in different antigen. So whenever some shared epitopes are there, then this cross reactivity is carried out. Another strength of binding. For the strength of binding of antibody with the antigen, we go for the two types of strength. One is known as affinity and another is known as avidity. Affinity means strength of binding between antigen, that antibody and the epitopic component. So whenever the epitopes are get binded with the antibody, this strength of binding is known as affinity. But whenever this overall strength of binding is occur in serum for that antigen, that is known as avidity. So there is a difference between the affinity and the avidity. When we have one single epitope is get binded with the single antibody, that gives the strength of binding gives the affinity. But whenever the huge number of antibodies get binded with the huge amount of antigenic molecule, they give the avidity. Now here we see that specificity, antibody specificity. Here we see this anti-A antibody which is generated against the antigen A. So this is the single type of the component. But if it is a cross-reactive, when it gives the cross-reactivity when these an epitopic component is remain the same for different antigen. Like we generate the anti-A antibody for this antigenic molecule, but their epitopic component show the similarity with the antigen B, and that is why it gives the cross reactivity. Similarly, if the antigenic component C have the similar feature of epitopic component, not make it totally similar but have some few similarity in their structure, they also go for the cross reactivity. So antibody can be given the cross reactivity also by having the similar type of the epitopic component can be get shared. So when the similar epitopic component is get shared or the shared epitopes are there, then they give rise to a cross reactivity. Now, sometimes this cross reactivity is good for the recognition and identification of some related antigens. But they are bad also because they confuse one antigen with the related antigen. So if we try to find out the similar type of the antigen, then it may be a good, but whenever it may be get confusion with the some related antigen, then it may be a bad. So this is affinity and avidity. So here in this figure you can see high affinity means when antigen, the each and every part of the antigenic component or epitopic component is get shared with the antibody equally. So we can see that this epitopic region is equally shared by each and every part with that antibody. But low affinity, whenever only few parts is get shared, rest of the component are not get interacting with the antibody as such. So that gives the low affinity. Okay. So this type of the whenever the antigen antibody component are only to get interacting, that gives the affinity. So you can see in the case of affinity, only one of the epitopic component are we get interacting with the antibody. But in the case of avidity, all the different antigen binding component are totally get interact with these antigenic molecules, and they give the avidity. So higher the avidity, that we get more the affinity. Lower the avidity, that we get the lower in affinity. So property of the antibody binding site and property of the valency. So avidity gives the property of the valency. If the more the valency, less the avidity and less the affinity also. So with the two type of the antibodies are there. One is known as polyclonal antibodies and another is known as the monoclonal antibodies. So polyclonal antibodies are isolated from human serum. Many different nucleotides are there, recognize many different epitopes and having the strong ability, highly sensitive and the cross reactivities are less specific. But in the case of monoclonal antibodies, it is a single nucleotide, single epitope, highly specific, lower ability. So these are the some difference in the polyclonal antibody and the monoclonal antibodies. So polyclonal antibodies directly gets isolated from the immune serum. Many nucleotides are there, strong ability is there and highly sensitive. But in the case of monoclonal antibody, single nucleotide, single epitope, highly specific but lower ability. So this figure, this other figure which shows the some monoclonal antibody just only get bind to the specific part of this proteinaceous molecule, only a single component. But polyclonal antibody can be bind with the multiple part of the single protein component. So this is how they can get the more ability, and the polyclonal antibody with the more ability, where the monoclonal antibody with the less ability. So generation of antibodies as reagent. So if we go through some polyclonal antibody, then what we do? We purify some antigen, inject it into rabbit or goat or any other species, collect its serum, purify immunoglobulins, and their specificity depends on the purity of antigen. So how the pure antigen is, that gives how much antibodies are how much amount of the antibodies are get formed. So if you have a good amount of antigenic components are there, so the good amount of the polyclonal antibodies are get formed. But if you doesn't have the pure antigenic component, the polyclonal antibodies are the lower in amount. In the case of monoclonal antibodies, what we do, we can immunize a mouse, then we culture the spleen cell, then we fuse that spleen cell with the myeloma cell and select some clones based on antibody specificity, and that is only specific for a single epitope. This is how we go for the monoclonal antibody production. So first of all, we immunize mouse with some specific antigen, extract its spleen, and that spleen of mouse is having that, because you know that spleens are having that specific type of the B cells which may be responsible for the production of antibodies. So these spleen cells are took out, and now this spleen cell which are having the B cells are get fused with the myeloma cell with the help of PEG, it's polyethylene glycol. So when this fusion is get occurred, then in the media you find out the three different types of the cell. B cell not be get fused, myeloma cells not be get fused, and the fused B and myeloma cells are seen. Now these fused myeloma B cells are responsible for the antibody production against some specific antigenic molecule. So these hybridoma, which are responsible for the production of antibodies, are selected on head media. So only those cells which are responsible for that antibodies production, the few cells responsible for the antibodies production are only to get selected, and rest of them are removed out. So these hybridoma clones, which making some specific cell-specific antibodies, are taken, and now they can be utilized for the immunofluorescence assay, okay, directly, or they can also be responsible for the cultured clone of hybridoma making cell-specific antibodies. So in this way, we go for the some cell specific antibodies production, or we can use hybridomas for the immunofluorescence assay. For any type of the function, we can go for the after the generation of this monoclonal antibodies. Now we come to the immunological assays. So mostly we can perform the two type of the immunological assay. One is known as the diagnostic assay and another is known as the research assay. So in diagnostic assay, what we do, we go for either assay for antigen or we go for assay for antibody. In the case of research, what we do, we can go for the identification of some cells, we go for some identification of cell products, we isolate some cell or the macromolecules, or we another function we carried out, that is cell function assay. So in research work we have so many work have done for these immunological assays, like identification of cell products and isolation of cell or the macromolecules, or we can perform the different cell functions. In the diagnosis, only we have to go for the two types of method. One is the antigen based diagnosis or other is antibody based diagnosis. Now in the today's world, it is the one of the most fascinating part of the pharmaceutical industry, because now the kit based diagnosis became a most popular and efficient tool for the diagnosis, or you can say the easy diagnostic tool is available, and that is why it has become one of the very fascinating component, because the generation of these type of the kit made that huge success. Now some examples of this diagnostic assay are hemoagglutination inhibition, ELISA, that is enzyme-linked immunosorbent assays, radioimmunoassay, that is RIA, and immunofluorescence assay, that is IFA. So any of these diagnostic assays will get performed either by assaying with the antigen or the antibody, and these are the some very commonly known diagnostic assays are, that is hemoagglutination inhibition, ELISA, that is enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, radioimmunoassay, immunofluorescence assay, or the IFA, and this may be a very common diagnostic assays. And in the case of research, we go for these different type of the process in the research techniques. Like in the research, we perform the ELISA, we perform the immunohistochemistry, we perform the flow cytometry, we perform the cell sorting method, we perform ELISpot, perform immunoblotting, perform immunoprecipitation, perform mixed lymphocyte response, and the last, which we can very commonly perform in this research technique, is the chromium release assay. So any of these research technique can be used for the immunological tool, and like ELISA, immunohistochemistry, flow cytometry, cell sorting is the very important phenomena which is very commonly done by all the different labs which are totally focused their research on the immunological aspects. Now, these two components are the most advanced type of the immunological tool which is done in the research laboratories, like the mixed lymphocyte response and the chromium release assay. They are the very latest and the newer technique. Type of the assay. So the two assays which can be performed very commonly, one is the precipitation test and another the colorimetric test. In the case of precipitation test, detection is based on precipitation of complexes. So we know whenever the antigen antibody interaction may get occurred, then there is a formation of a complex, and that is known as the antigen antibody complexes, and that is which can be detected in the case of the precipitation test. Colorimetric test may be a fluorescent or the enzyme link, and we can do any type of these two tests as a assay procedure. Now in the precipitation test. So in the case of precipitation test, antigen antibody complexes are get precipitate equivalence. So whenever the equal amount of the antigen and antibody get interacting to each other at some equivalent point, then they give rise to a precipitin line, and this is what we can detect in the case of the precipitation reaction. And what is the utility of this precipitation reaction is? The utility is first of all detection, and another is quantification. So detection is a visual precipitate, right? So whenever the precipitin line is get formed, it is visually you can visualize the precipitin line with your naked eye. It is very clearly seen in any type of the gel that this is how that this precipitin line can get formed. And another is quantification. If you want to know the amount of the antigen or the antibody which is available in the precipitation reaction, so you can be quantify it with the help of any of these two processes. One is the dilution, and another is the diffusion. So by either the dilution or the diffusion process, you can be quantify this overall precipitation, that antigen antibody interaction in the precipitation process. So in the diagram you can see that here the antibody is accessed, so you can be not to get the proper precipitin line here. But here if the antigen is accessed, also you cannot get the precipitin line. But whenever these antigen antibodies get in the equal amount is get available in the antigen antibody component, then it will get the lattice formation, and that is how the precipitation is get formed. Now there is another slide which shows the how you can get the equivalence zone. So whenever you get the antibody access zone, so there is a less number of the antigen is there, high number of the antibodies are there, so that this is not to get the proper equivalence zone. The precipitin line is low amount. The precipitin line is not to get into that accurate manner. So whenever the equal amount of the antigen and antibody are get involved in the equivalence zone, the huge precipitation lines get formed, and this is what known as the equivalence zones where can you get the precipitin line. But whenever the antigen is accessed, then also you not to get the proper that precipitin line, because here it is the antigen access zone. So for the precipitin line to get formed, it is very important that you have to get the both antigen antibody into the equal number, and this would be get to the equivalence zone, and then how can we get the precipitin lines or the precipitin reaction. So wherever the antigen access zone is there, it is also been termed as a prozone. Now precipitin test, that is immunodiffusion. So these are the well known tests which is already you can perform in your laboratory by any of the method, in which the first is most important and a very commonly utilized test in the laboratory, that is known as double immunodiffusion, or also be known as DID in short, and it is also be termed as a Ochterlony method, because Ochterlony is that personality who can first identify this precipitin test, and that is why it is termed as Ochterlony method. What we do in this process, here what we do, we can create well on agarose gel. Now in this slide you can see that this is how the gels are the gels, after the formation of their gels, you can prepare the well in it. So this is the well. So 1, 2 and 3 well are get formed, and now in the different well, in one well we add antibody, and another well we add the antigens. So here these three different type of DID or double immunodiffusion, what we do, we can add antibody here and antigen at this slice, this wells. So in this way you have to, whenever you add on, then you can get the precipitin line after the interaction. So this is what the other, you can see the precipitin line in a different manner. So on the basis of the precipitin line, you can get the three different type of the identification. One is known as identity, another is known as non-identity, and third is partial identity. So what is the difference between the identity, non-identity and the partial identity? So if you go through this slide, then you can find out that here we can generate the antibody against antigen 1. So whenever we have in these two wells, if we get the antigen 1, then either like in this way you can add a one antigen, and here you can add antigen 1 with the another antigenic molecule. But this antigen 3 doesn't have the specificity for the antibody. So this antigen 3 is unable to get interact with the antibody. Also, there is no precipitating line for the antigen 3, but you can get the precipitating line for the antigen 1 in the both the way. So you have to get the interaction of antigen 1 this side also after the diffusion, and get the antigen interaction at this side also after the interaction, and now you can get the precipitating lines like this. So whenever you get the well-shaped precipitating line, that gives the identity of precipitating. That means both the wells getting the same number of antigenic molecule. In the non-identity, you can see that here we can generate the antibody against the 1, 2 and 4. So this antibody is a mixture of 3 different antigens, that is 1, 2 and 4. So we have a antigen 1 in this well and antigen 2 and 4 in another well. So after that, interacting with this antibody, we can find out 3 different precipitating lines, 1, 2 and 4. So this is the different precipitating line shows that we have the different type of the antibodies are there in this well. So this gives the sign that if you have the any type of interaction, the amount of and the number of the antibodies which are available for some specific antigenic component, then you can get seen in different precipitating line. Another is partial identity. You can see we have a 2 antibody against the 2 antigen, that is 1 and 2, and in the first we can add a 1 antigen, but in the another well we can just add a half of the both the antigenic component 1 and 2. So it is not the equal in property. So you can get this type of spur line which cannot complete the complete identity gets seen. There is some partial identity gets seen, and this is because of you cannot get the equal amount of the antigen in the both the these well. So this is how you can go for the some immunodiffusion process may help to identify either how many different type of antibodies get formed against some antigenic molecule, and you can be just determine those antibody component with the help of this precipitating line. Okay. Now we come to the next, that is radial immunodiffusion. In the case of radial immunodiffusion, we have to get the zone of precipitation. So in the similar manner as like the initial slide, you can see that the antigen antibody interaction gives rise to a precipitating line, but here you can get the zone of precipitation, and this zone of precipitation is directly proportional to the concentration. So in this experiment, what we do, we create the well 1, 2, 3, 4. We created 4 different well, and antibody is already pre-coated on the gel. So antibody is already mixed in the gel, and it is get coated on the surface of this slide. So after that, we can create a well, and this well is loaded with the antigenic molecule. So when we left this gel for the overnight, then we find out according to the concentration of the antigen, we get the zone of precipitation. So this overall length is termed as the zone of precipitation. So as the zone is get increases, the concentration of the antigen is get increases. So this is directly proportional to the concentration. So you can directly see that कि यहाँ पर हमारे पास low concentration का antigen था, और later on जैसे हमने concentration बढ़ाते हैं, we get the high number of these antigen antibody components. So the concentration of antigen is get higher here in this slide. Okay. And now on the basis of that, you can be also plot a graph in which you can be get the antigen, that amount of the some antigen. Okay. So zone of precipitation is proportional that may help in the identification and the quantification. So by getting the diameter of this zone of precipitation, we get the concentration of antigen by radial immunodiffusion. Now, there is another process of that precipitation reaction that is known as the electrophoresis or radial immunodiffusion, or it is also termed as rocket immunoelectrophoresis. And here what we do, we get the similar component as in the initial slide we do. We can load the antibody here on the gel, and we can load the antigen in a different well with a different concentration. And then after what we do, we can start giving electric current to this overall experiment, and as this movement of the antigenic component is going to occur inside the well. Now with the migration of this antigenic component within this gel, we can get the precipitating line according to them. Okay, so higher the number of antigen, get the more precipitating rocket, and then we get the more better precipitating line. And this is what you can get the rocket immunoelectrophoresis, or you can get the radial immunodiffusion. Here, differential charge of the antigen antibody is important. So you can be on the basis of that, you can be separate the antigenic molecule on the basis of their charge component, and they improve sensitivity of the radial immunodiffusion. So you can be easily placing the radial immunodiffusion. So whatever the some limitation of that radial immunodiffusion is, that is also be overcome by this rocket immunoelectrophoresis. Okay, so height of rocket is proportional to antigen concentration. वहाँ पे हमने zone of emission, zone of precipitation देखा था, but यहाँ पर we can see that rocket, the height of rocket is proportional to the antigen concentration. Now, quantification by titration, that is another method through which we can be carried out that how much amount of antigen antibody component are get involved with some interaction. So that is also carried out by some titration method. Okay, so in the titration, what we do, we quantify. The principle of this process is quantification of antibody or antigen by serial dilution. Okay, first of all the antibody or the antigen molecule, we get serial diluted. Single concentration of antigen or antibody is used, and diluting the antibody, or you can simply what you do, you can use a single concentration of either the antigen or antibody, or dilute either the antigen or the antibody. Then we go for the titer, the dilution at which precipitation occurs. This dilution reflects but does not equal concentration. So it doesn't reflect the equal concentration, as like in the case of the above slides you can see that zone of equivalence is very important for the identification or the quantification. But here the equal concentration is not very required. Example is hemagglutination or ELISA. Now this is hemagglutination. This is the one plate on the surface of which you can perform the hemagglutination. So here what we do, we can dilute the serum which contains the antibody. So we can dilute the antibody with this fraction like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64 and so on, and we add an antigen in this ABCD, and what we find out, where that agglutination is get occur, we can get this much of that some precipitation component. But if there is no agglutination, that only dot are get seen. And this is why it is so, because if you can see this is the red cells. When the antibodies are get binded to the specific antigen, then only they can go for the hemagglutination. Otherwise not. So in this plate you can observe this titration. So whenever you dilute your antibody, so they give the concentration. So here you see that 1:32. So 2, 4, 8, 16 and 32. This much of the antibodies are available to bind with the antigen which is available in this figure. So whatever the concentration, because the concentration of antigen is get fixed in the different numbers. Here we have some different number, here we have a different number, here we have a different number of antigenic components are there. So whenever we change all the different number, so according to that we can see that in the first in the A slide, in the A wells, we found that up to 32 dilutions we get the good amount of this agglutination. But in the case of B, you can see there is no agglutination is found out, but at this positive. So we have the two other components, one is the positive and negative. So precipitation can be get occur, but this much concentration will not be sufficient for the precipitation to get occur. So in this way, you have to get the complete titer chart of how and which amount of the antibody is getting interacted with the antigen molecule in the case of hemoglobination. Now, this is what when the antigen is get in excess, they will get the prozone. So the prozone is basically the sign where the antigen is getting access. Now there is another very important that colorimetric test is ELISA, that is enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. That is the specific interaction between antibody and antigen, solid phase, sensitive detection. ELISA is highly sensitive detection. Description antigen bound to a surface, enzyme bound to antibody, colorimetric reaction, semi-quantitative, and generate titer. So, in this case, antigen bound to a surface and enzyme bound antibodies are available. Colorimetric reactions are there, semi-quantitative, and they generate titer also. So, here we see the ELISA. So here we have a ELISA. What we do? First of all, we can adhere the antigen on some solid surface. Then we add antigen which are highly specific for we add antibodies which are highly specific for the antigen. And now the binding of antigen is get occur on this surface. Then we carry out the washing, and this washing may eliminate all the unbound antibodies. Then after we get add some secondary antibodies. They are specific for the primary with their FC region, and these are the enzyme linked. And then after we carry out the washing, and then after we see that antibodies, secondary antibodies are get mounted, and as soon you can add substrate, they give the color reaction. So this is what this ELISA is. So sensitized plate with antigen, washed, add test antibody, washed, add ligand, washed, add chromosome or the substrate, develop plate. So these are some pictures which show that developed ELISA in these plates. Okay, with the different dilution as we see in the previous slide. With the different dilution we get the different color, and this that gives the antigen antibody role. Now we have the different variation on ELISA. We have different type of ELISA like indirect ELISA, capture or sandwich ELISA, alispot, competitive ELISA, radioimmunoassay, immunoblot, or diagnostics. So these different type form of the ELISA can be performed. Now we come to the first ELISA, that direct ELISA, indirect ELISA, sandwich or captured ELISA. You can see in the direct ELISA what we do, antigen is get adhered on the solid surface. Then the primary antibody which is already get attached with some enzyme component is added on, and by adding the substrate it gives the color product, and that is termed as direct ELISA. So in the case of indirect ELISA, first of all some antigen is get adhered on the surface of solid surface, then primary antibody is get attached, and the secondary antibody which is enzyme labeled and get the specific for the FC region of those primary antibody, bind it with them, and after adding the substrate give the color, that is the indirect ELISA. Okay, so in the case of indirect ELISA we use the secondary antibody, but in the case of direct ELISA there is no secondary antibody is used. Then we have a sandwich ELISA or capture assay. Here in place of antigen we adhere primary antibody first, and then we add a antigen. Then another primary antibody which having the similar specificity for the that antigenic molecule is added, and now the secondary antibody with the enzyme link is add on, and this is how the sandwich get made. The two antibody in between the two antibody the antigen is captured, so that is why it is termed as capture assay or the sandwich ELISA. So mostly primary antibodies are formed in goat or any other species, and secondary antibody is get formed in rabbit, that is either the anti-goat, anti-mice or so on. So this is what the, and there is another, this is competitive ELISA. You can see it is the antigenic molecule. So some enzyme linked antibodies are gained. The more the specificity with the that some enzymes are antibodies are there, so they have a bind and give the reaction, but those doesn't have the some specificity for the that interaction with the antigenic molecule, they are leave out, so that is termed as a competitive ELISA. There is another competitive ELISA in which you can see that the two antibodies are attached on the plate. Now we can be add some capture antibody in the wells. Finally, we have some different type of the component which are attached. So those who have the more competition for the bind with these antibodies, now they have to get the reaction, and others are going to move out. So this is what the competitive ELISA is. Alice Spot assay, that is another very important technique which is used nowadays. What we do in Alice Spot, mostly what we do, we can just add some specific type of lymphocyte, either the B cell or the T cell, directly in place of antibodies. So when the antibody, you know that the property of the B cell and the T cells are there. That property of the B cell is that whenever they start interacting with the antigenic component, then they start secreting antibodies. And the T cell is whenever they interacting with the antigen, they start secreting cytokines. So cytokines have the that ability to bind with the antibodies. And the antibodies are directly able, that have the ability to get bind with the antigenic molecules. So in the Alice Spot issue, what we do, we can isolate either the B cell or the T cell unknowingly that which type of the antibody production they can do. Then after what we do, we can just add this B cell or the T cell directly on the antigen coated plate. So after interacting with that antigenic molecule, B cells start producing antibodies. Okay, and then we generate the sum, and that is antibody component which has already get enzyme linked, and whenever we get the add the some substrate molecule, we get the color reaction and confirms the either the antigen specific B cells are get produced or not. Similarly, if you want to see that any B cells are activated against that antigenic component or not, what to do? First of all, we go for the anti-cytokine coated plate, and this anti-cytokine coated plate, whenever we attack the T cell with them, they start releasing the cytokines. These cytokines are also be just antibody cytokines are get produced, which are anti-linked, and finally they give the color reaction after adding the chromogen or the substrate molecule. So in the case of Alice Spot assay, we directly use T cell or the B cell for the detection of some specificity of antibody production or that some cytokines production of the T cells and the B cells. Now another is immunoblocking assay. Immunoblocking is another very important technique in which what we do, we can simply see that either some protein is get involved in immunological process or not. So what we do, first of all, we go for the separation of the protein in page. Now that these proteins or the antigens are get separated on the gel. So this gel is get transferred to a nitrocellulose membrane. So transfer of peptide to a nitrocellulose membrane, is how the transfer is get occur. Then after the transfer, we add antibody, wash it, and radio-labeled conjugate are added into the those surface of those. And finally, after getting the radiograph, we develop and fix radiograph. They give the some antigen bands directly onto the those membrane, and this is what known as the immunoblotting or the Western blotting. This is the most commonly utilized technique for the expression of some protein or knowing either some antigenic component are existing for some protein molecule or not. So in the molecular diagnosis, if you want to detect either some person is affected from some disease or not, what we do, first of all, we go for the separation of some specific proteins from their blood or serum, and then separate those proteins directly into the gel, transfer it onto the membrane, and then we generate some antibody which is already generated. Antibodies are there against some specific disease, are just attached on the surface of those membrane, and whenever they have got the specificity for their protein molecule, they start interacting, and finally they can be get visualized as a band, and they give the positive and the negative confirmation in the case of immunoblotting or the Western blotting. Now, these are some kits which are already developed by the above protocols which we have discussed. Here we see that this type of the kits are most popular, in which on the basis of the bands which are visualized, you can go for some positive, negative or the invalid test. So this type of the bands are get seen, and on the basis of which you can be identified either some person is get diseased or not, or there is also be some these kits are also be meant for the various other type of the diagnosis, like some glucose indicator, some pregnancy test, and so on. Now, immunohistochemistry or the immunofluorescence. Here it is another type of the assay what we do, in which we go for the detection of antigen into the solid phase directly into the tissue or the cytology. So as we see in the previous slides what we see, we can separate the antigen into the gel or any other solid surface. But here in the case of immunochemistry or the immunofluorescence, we can detect the antigenic component directly into the tissue section or the cytology. And that is done on the basis of the surface markers which are available on them, or some intracellular product, some extracellular product, or the metabolic product. So we can use this method for the detection of some surface marker, some intracellular product, or the extracellular product or metabolic product, or it can also be check the distribution of these components. Now this is what you can go for the immunofluorescence. What we do, antigen is there, this is a tissue, directly tissue section is there. We can attach the fluorochrome labeled antibody on their surface, and this fluorochrome give the reactions, or the whenever we can use the fluorescent microscope, then they give the color images. So indirect, like in the case of indirect ELISA, first of all we attach antigen directly in the tissue, unlabeled antibodies, and then after we attach the labeled antibody on their surface, and this is how we can detect into the fluorescent microscope. They give the color formation. This is one of the picture in which you see what is the how immunohistochemistry get used. This is the overall cell component directly to the tissue. Here we use two types of fluorochromes. One is red and another is green. So red color of fluorochromes are generated against the BCL6, which is the germinal center of B cell. That is the component which is a part of the germinal center of B cell. And green color gives that is generated against the IRF4, which is a part of the plasma cell. So if you can just attach these antibodies in directly the tissue, then we can find out these green colors show the plasma cell distribution inside this tissue, on the surface of this tissue, and these red cell give the distribution of the B cells in this tissue. So these all the red component are the B cells, and then these green color are the plasma cells, and their distribution can be easily localized into the tissue. So in this way, the immunohistochemistry helps the giving the proper distribution and the cell marker location on the surface directly onto the tissue surface. This is the indirect immunohistochemistry, in which what we do, the primary antibody that is attached to the antigen is not to get labeled, but the secondary antibody is get labeled, and by giving the interaction they give the color coded. Similarly, there is another type of the surface marker against which the fluorochromes are used, that is CD4 5R of the B cell and the IR4 of the B cell plasma cell. That is how the immunohistochemistry can be used. That is, there is some immunohistochemistry of enzymatic reaction, that is activated caspases are get seen, that is the apoptotic process in the directly into the tissue system. We can visualize that apoptotic process directly into the tissue by this enzymatic reaction. That is another kit which is generated. We can perform to the lab directly by the vector taken ABC. We can see the immunohistochemistry directly to the lab by these kits. Now, so if we get the comparative analysis of all the type of the enzyme linked and related assay, then we find out ELISA, then simple ELISA, in which the target is bound to well. Detection is chromogen. It may be a 3-type direct, indirect, or sandwich. ELISpot, in which we use the product of cultured cell, and detection is chromogen, and B or T cell products can be used. Immunohistochemistry, you can perform it into the tissue directly. Chromogen or fluorochromes are get used, direct or indirect are used. Competitive ELISA, insoluble and chromogens are used. Immunoblot, it is on the gel separated protein, maybe chromogen, fluorochrome, radioactive isotopes, any type of component can be utilized. Antibody as trap, that is FACS. Now the FACS is what? So now the FACS is another very important technique in which we use the equipment, that is a fluorescent activated cell sorting machine, which may carry out the two major phenomena. One is the quantitation and another is the isolation. Another is panning, in which plate isolation of cell population, that is panning, and magnetic bead isolation of cell and the macromolecules is also be done. So this is first FACS. In the case of FACS, you can see what happens. Sample, the cell is coated with the fluorescent antibody, so we can use 3 different type of fluorescent component. One is red, another is green, and this. So we have the 3 different type of the cell component, like B cell is with the red, T cell with the green, and macrophage with the same colors are used, and mixed sample are loaded into the machine. Now after vibrating flow cell, this laser beam are responsible for the that it is responsible for those beams to be get splitted. So these are the beam splitters, and which are responsible for the different cells to be get separated out. Now they charging the color of those cells, and they can separate the different cell component into the different wells. So this is how the different cells are get counted in the sample, and also we get separated into the different tubes. And this is what the main aim of these machine is, to be get counted each and every cell component, and also they can separate the different type of those separating cells on the basis of their fluorochromes. Now that is the panning, isolation of lymphocyte subpopulation. So in the panning, what we do, the surface antigen corresponding to antibodies on plate. So we can plate the antibody which is already generated against the antigenic component of some antigen molecule, mix the all over the lymphocyte applied on the plate, and the mixture of lymphocyte when applied on the plate, only those having the antigenic properties get binded to them and rest of the remove out, and this is how we can go for the lymphocyte subpopulation separation, and this is known as panning. Now there is a magnetic bead separation, that is the immunomagnetic beads are there. What we do, we have a antibody coated magnetic beads are there. So these antibody coated magnetic beads are generated against some antigen positive part. So whenever we add these antibody coated magnetic beads into the cell suspension by applying some external field, these magnetic beads with the antigenic component are get separated out. Rest of the antigenic component which are not be a part of antibodies are elute out, and we can separate these antigen which are already get binded with the magnetic bead antibodies, and finally by removing these beads from the antigen, we count the amount of the antigen positive cells. This is how we can carry out the cell separation by immunomagnetic bead. So this is the one of this equipment which is commonly used for this immunomagnetic bead separation, cell separation. Now the next assay, that is known as lymphocyte assay, in which we carried out the two major phenomena, that is lymphocyte act as a tool, easy to isolate and survive well in a culture. So assay is ELISpot, already we discussed about the ELISpot, lymphocyte blastogenesis stimulation test or chromium release assay test. So these are the two major tests which may be performed for the lymphocytic assays. That is T cell line generation. Antigen inserted into the mice, spleen is removed out, then spleen cell are cultured, then we add the antigenic component, now the culture is activated, and this activated culture is now the activated culture start producing the cytokines, and now the cytokines help for the some assay property. So this is how the T cell lines can be used for the some lymphocyte assay procedures. This lymphocyte stimulation test, in which we can use a whole blood, centrifuge it, we can separate the lymphocytes. Separate lymphocyte is mixed with some antigenic suspension, some culture media and the family, and now the cultivation is get occurred, the activated T cells are get transferred to the glass fiber, and then we measure the activity, because those who are responsible for the activity of cytokine production, they have the ability to produce the radioactivity, and this is what the lymphocytic stimulation test. And the culture medium added into the lymphocyte, that is termed as the blastogenesis. And the magnetic bead isolation, subculture, cloning, any of the procedure can be performed for the lymphocyte separation. The last is the cytotoxicity test, in which target cell is get mixed with the chromium ion. We can still separate our target cells which are already getting some chromium component, and rest of the component is removed out. This cultured component is cultured for the 4 to 16 hours, and some of them are get died. Then we measure the chromium component from the supernatant, and finally we can test either how many lymphocytic cells are being activated and how many are not being activated. In this chromium release assay, we can see the viability of some lymphocytic component. So that's all for the today's lecture, and thank you all.